While I was a graduate student at the University of Nebraska, I took a trip to Chile near Santiago in a little village called Coronilla and did a kiln building workshop. We made the kiln during the day and we made pots at night, and at the end of the week we ended up firing the kiln. There was a peninsula with a lighthouse on a tall point. So I was taking a walk, and as I was approaching this lighthouse from downhill, I was looking up at the lighthouse. There was a striking silhouette against the blue sky. It was right then and there that I understood what it was about architecture that was so important to my work. And it's the silhouette and the space around architecture that was so appealing to me.
We're in the process of loading the inaugural firing. It's been something my students have been anticipating for the whole semester. We've been talking about it.
When Seth came to us with this proposal last year, I didn't know what he was talking about. I had no idea what a train kiln was.
This is a wood kiln. We had it built over the summer. There were a few guys coming from Salt Lake City, Utah. Came out, helped us build it.
And he hired or brought on board people from across the country. They took out the old gas one and then assembled this beautiful piece.
They've been preparing projects throughout the semester. We've been talking about the wood firing process, the different types of glazes and other materials that we put on the pots to get the results that we want.
During my study, I've actually been trying to get the earth tones and the colors that the wood kiln can provide that the electric kiln itself is kind of hard to find.
Seth is a new faculty member. He's an assistant professor. We do all that we can to financially support their specific research. And this is Seth's expertise, and sort of the innovation he brings to our program is this way of firing pottery.
As I was studying the architectural references, thinking about the symbolism used in religious architecture, kind of led me to think about what goes on inside of these places. So I began looking at examples of metalwork, glass work, pottery, especially from Persian and Ottoman empires. One in particular is Islamic metalwork. So I began to really develop a glaze that kind of reminisced that. I do a lot of glaze tests in the glaze lab. One of the things I studied specifically in graduate school was glaze chemistry. I studied with one of the leading glaze chemists in the field, Pete Pinnell. Learned a lot about how to formulate these glazes to kind of reminisce metal. The firing process is really important, from the clay to the type of slip that I use, and then also type of firing cycle that I'm using. All that is really important to the success of this work. In college, I was a wildland firefighter for the Forest Service, and my experience on the fire line, I tried to figure out what I could do to capture that type of power and intensity in my work into ceramics. And then when I did my very first wood firing, kind of the light bulb went on and I understood what it was I could do to capture that. In general, I'm thinking about the different types of kilns that we have in ceramics as tools to finish our work. Kiln building is something that's really important to me. I also try to involve students when we're building the kilns and also when we're firing the kilns.
What's going to happen on the day of loading is we're going to actually crawl inside of this kiln here. We've loaded this front part of the kiln, we're loading the back part of the kiln, and eventually we're going to be loading pots right here. That door right here will get bricked up right here, obviously after I get out. We'll start the fire in this lower firebox here, kind of a small preheat, about 100 degrees an hour overnight.
I will actually be here at 1 a.m. That's my shift, 1 to 6.
And then in the morning, when it gets above 1,000 degrees, we'll start throwing larger chunks of wood inside of this firebox here. And then we'll start throwing smaller pieces of wood in the backside.
We are preparing the wood into different sizes to help us utilize the wood during different parts of the firing.
The wood's going to go right between the stack of the pots. So there's two little small alleyways. We call them secondary fireboxes.
We have little peepholes to keep track of the heat. And then we have little cones that we see.
These cones are made up of the same materials our glazes are made out of, and they're rated to melt at different temperatures. So all that heat and that ash is being drawn through the kiln.
And then you get flashes going around as the ash travels around the actual piece.
A lot of the heat and the flame will exit up the chimney. Most of the ash will just deposit inside the kiln on the pots themselves. And that's what creates a glaze.
Once we're done firing, we shut it down and keep it all warm.
This part that we're working on, it's actually really important because, I mean, this is a do or die with your piece.
There is some level of predictability, but there's also a level of this really serendipitous moment when you're opening the kiln. There's a level of control that we give up, which is kind of one of the really exciting parts about firing with wood.
I'm not really the traditional potter that just kind of makes one pot out of one single piece of clay. I feel like I'm more of a builder. I do lots of building in sections, so I'm thinking architecturally. This is thrown in one piece here, and this is then a separate piece, and then I put this piece on here, and then this is a stopper. This is made in two parts here. It also has a little bit of a rattle in there. When I'm in the studio, it's usually late nights, and I'm in the studio thinking about my kids. I have little rituals that I have for myself in the studio. The most exciting part about my work is when I'm putting the finishing touches on the work. I'm putting the finial on, or I am applying that last little piece. And I have a fun little exercise that I do. I have what's called a finial library. I have a collection of finials that don't end up making it on pots. Either the composition's not right, or there was another part of the pot that didn't work out, so I just save these pieces. And I end up firing them anyway, and I kind of put them up on my shelf above my wheel, so when I'm working I can use them to compose. I'm sketching in 3 dimensions. There's something you can really learn from your failures. One of the really important things that one of my undergraduate professors taught me, Susan Harris, I was getting ready for my senior show, and I opened the kiln and I looked at it and I was really devastated. I was really unhappy with the results that I saw. And she says, there are some really successful things on each of these pieces. You should take a look at this work a little bit closer and decide what parts are successful, and remember those things, and then when you sit down at the wheel again, incorporate those successes in the work. There are really no failures, in my opinion. There's only lessons that you can learn from those particular things. It will help you really make your work progress.
It's a perfect opportunity to actually experiment, to learn.
I think we're fortunate that Seth came here, brought this innovation to our students. I'm grateful as a dean that our upper administration recognizes that Seth's research is as important as our scientists and our biologists.
You come to him with an idea and he just sparks it. As a student, that's all you look for in a professor. And then his work alone, you know, they're basically masterpieces.